Good morning, colleagues. Legislature is back in session. We are in second reading, and we are on Bill number 6-38 COR. Senator St. Augustine, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as of last night, I asked that it be placed on the third reading and we'll be allowed to discuss the bill.
Yes, you can proceed.
Thank you. Bill 6-38 COR is an act to transfer lot number 10063-REM-PTN-1 Municipality of Deadwood to Special Olympics Guam for the establishment of their administrative office and training facility in support of Guam Special Olympics athletes and programs. Good morning, my colleagues. Bill 6-38 is a bill where we give Guam Special Olympics a home. Everyone in this body knows someone with a disability. Some of us have been at their games, cheering them on. Today, we have the opportunity to change that. At the hearing, we discussed a property located across JFK, another piece of property in Deadwood, across from the former flea market was suggested by a CLTC representative. It is crucial to remember the property mentioned in the bill was initially thought to belong to DISIT. However, after speaking with DISIT and establishing contact with the Department of Land Management, it was discovered that the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, not DISIT, is the current owner of the property. The measure is not limited to land. This measure is not limited to land. It is about empowering our athletes, improving the lives of people with intellectual disabilities, providing long overdue support to an organization that's quietly but strongly impacted our island for nearly 50 years. You know, I approached the director, and who's still currently the director, Mr. Frank Fork, and I said, Frank, what can we do to help you? Help the organization. He goes, Joe, we have never approached the government for any assistance. We have done this for 40, back then it was 46 years. We've never asked the government for anything. It's the kindness of your hearts that you guys come out and help us. So with this, I introduced the bill previously and today now. By providing Special Olympics Guam with this land rather than just a place to operate, we're investing in the future of our athletes. We're advocating for the importance of inclusiveness, that their training, achievement, and objectives are significant. This facility will serve as a year-round hub for training, coordination, and development, making it a home for every champion. The transfer is subject to a tight criteria to guarantee that it is used in accordance with the goals of the Special Olympics Guam, while also protecting the interests of the people of Guam. If the land is not used as intended, we revert it back to the people, specifically the Chamorro Land Trust. And I'd like to identify, Mr. Speaker, and to my colleagues that administrative oversight, that thank you, my colleague from Tamuning identified that on page 2, line 21, is identified that the property shall revert back to GovGuam. She has an amendment, it will revert back to the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. Colleagues, most importantly, this is about recognizing the invaluable contribution that Special Olympics athletes make to our island. They remind us every day of the strength found in perseverance, the joy in teamwork, the dignity in participation. This facility will allow them to train with pride, plan with purpose, and perform with confidence. At every event, my colleagues, if you have participated in the past, you're always reminded of the oath they take. And that oath is, let me win, but if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt. And I know that many of you have attended these events. And with this bill, we honor that spirit by giving our Special Olympics athletes a permanent home where they can prepare, persevere, and proudly represent Guam with courage, dignity, and strength. I humbly ask for your full support in Bill 6-38 COR for the transfer of the property to Special Olympics Guam, so they may finally establish a permanent home for our athletes, a place where our athletes can train, thrive, and continue to inspire our island with this strength and determination. Jesus Marcy, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, sir. On the bill, is there any senators wishing to speak on the bill? Second call on the bill. Gentlelady from Tumuning, you're recognized.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Hope you had a restful night, and to my colleagues, I hope there was a restful night, because here we go again, round 3, into the wee hours, that this is the job that we decided to run for. And right now we have an opportunity here, a good opportunity, to help a nonprofit organization that's been doing this for many years on the island of Guam, to very special individuals to partake in the Special Olympics. I can't tell you how many times I've gone where you just see the smiles of participants, you see those who are the spectators who are watching, the volunteers who are out there. They do it with all their heart and soul. It's definitely a good cause. And it's one where this nonprofit organization has raised quite a bit of funding. So the question is, if we give this land to this nonprofit organization, will they be able to utilize this to what we anticipate and hope? They build a building, they have a field, they have areas in which they can train, their participants. And that's exactly what they were mentioning and pushing during the public hearing. However, the first original land that, and I'm glad it was amended, because the first original land that was requested for was just way too small. It didn't sound like an area that you can have field events, do practices, and even hold competitions. There was just no way it was going to do that. And during the public hearing, it was brought up, in fact, not just one property, but 2 properties that could be available. One of the Chamorro Land Trust board members, mentioned a piece of property in Dedido, while another member mentioned there was property in Hoggett that was supposed to be given to Department of Parks and Recreation. And so there were options, and there were larger pieces of property that would do exactly what the Special Olympics need, and their participants need as well. Excuse me. So that being said, it became, that afternoon, a win-win situation. We can provide them the square footage that they need in parcels of property that was not being utilized. Now, I did take the time, Mr. Speaker, to call one of the members, the board members of the Special Olympics, and ask them, I wanted to make sure and clear, will you be charging any fees for people coming to watch the events? Will you be charging people to use the facility? Will you be doing any kind of charging like that? And the board member said, no, we've never charged anyone. This is totally free to the people of Guam to participate, and especially for those who are taking, who are part of the events. And I said, that's a good thing. Because if you were charging and trying to make money off this property, for other reasons, then for any reasons, then I think it's something that you should consider on paying rent for this property. So that being said, I was convinced that that's the route to go. That it will be free to the public. And that's important. I think that land belongs to the people of Guam, and they should be able to participate, not have to spend for something that this body is able to give to a nonprofit. And like I said earlier, and even during the public hearing, I mentioned, and it was concurred by one of the members, that yes, they generate quite a bit of donations. As I mentioned earlier, they're going to need that because they're going to have to build a facility. Because if it doesn't, it reverts back. So I believe it was 5 years. If nothing is done within 5 years, then it will revert back. So I wanted to offer an amendment, Mr. Speaker and my colleagues, that if it does revert back, that it reverts back to the Chamorro Land Trust, or just reverts to the Chamorro Land Trust. So I have an amendment that was passed out. Everyone should have one. And I did speak with the author about this amendment, who he concurs. Actually, he was going to put an amendment to do this himself, but it was already done. I beat him to the punchline. So that being said, it's on line 21, page 2. And letter A, the property shall revert to the, and then this is the inclusion of the amendment, is Chamorro Land Trust Commission, striking out Government of Guam. If the grantee is dissolved at any time during the effect of this act or fails to utilize the property for the purchase, for the purposes prescribed in this act, 5 years from enactment. And that's my amendment, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, does everybody, first off, you have a copy of the amendment, or you understand the amendment? Okay, it's to line 2, page 2, line 21. Strike out Government of Guam and now reads Chamorro Land Trust Commission. On the amendment, any senator wishing to speak on the amendment? Senator Snoxty?
Mr. Speaker, I stand in full support. When my colleague from Tumuning identified that, I said, I was just about to submit that amendment. She goes, I got it. I said, thank you. It was just an administrative oversight on our part. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Any other senator wishing to speak on the amendment? Good Senator from Zonia, you're recognized.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Speaker, Manana Sidus, to the people of Guam and to my colleagues, thank you for watching our session here of the 38th Guam Legislature. Biba Special Olympics. Love Special Olympics. I know we always spend a lot of time together at the different events. The track and field event is definitely one of my favorite ones, and they have it up there at the Ukadu Bulldogs track. And I also want to take this opportunity to congratulate the class of 2025, the Ukadu Bulldogs, as they are set to graduate, I think, in about 45 minutes. So Biba Bulldogs class of 2025. And I rise in support of the amendment. I commend the author. I think it's a great catch. And I know during the public hearing, Mr. Florig had talked about different grant and funding availabilities that would be used to construct the administrative offices that they're proposing to build on this property. But it wasn't really clear on the timeline, so I think this is prudent. I think it's reasonable that we're given a certain amount of time, and if they're unable to move forward with that, then the property would revert back to the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. So I commend the, what does that you say, Mr. Speaker, the good, gentle lady from Timoning for this amendment, and I stand in support of the amendment, Mr. Speaker. Sidus Masi.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Any other senator wishing to speak on the amendment? On the amendment? No takers? Or gentle lady from Zonia, you're recognized? On the amendment.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Speaker. Of course, I support the amendment, reverting it if it's not used for its purpose. But I'd also like to rise to a point of order. I think this bill has completely changed from the one we had at the public hearing. The lots are different. The size has doubled. I'm unable to get confirmation from Chamorro Land Trust as to whether they have no testimony submitted. They said in their testimony that they were not able. They had, first of all, some members not confirmed yet. They had been fired at the time of the public hearing, and that they were going to submit testimony when they were able to have a quorum and have a hearing. but I think we have not received testimony from them in regards to the substance of this property, and we were unable to ask any questions at the public hearing in regards to this property. But if it is Chamorro Land Trust property, then of course I support this amendment that it be reverted. But so I just like to put that on the record. That I think this bill is materially different, and I think it's dangerous for us to proceed with land transfers without being able to talk to land management and get the full details of this property. That's, I think, why the statute, we have 2 GCA that says, you know, we have to have assessments of this property before we consider them in here. And I think we should allow Chamorro Land Trust some testimony and perhaps land management to confirm some things that we are questioning.
So noted. Thank you. On the amendment? On the amendment? Okay. Senator Tidy, you want to close on the amendment?
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you for everyone who stood up in support of this amendment. You know, I think that during the public hearing that we had, you know, I believe land management was there and 2 members from Chamorro Land Trust. In fact, it was their recommendations on this property. And so I think it was clear that if the public hearing was held, that any testimonies moving forward, they had ample time within the 10-day period grace time. So we could incorporate it into any markup meeting. So, but you know, that being said, I read the committee report, and I didn't see anything, you know, objecting to this property at all as well. So with that being said, I appreciate everyone's support on this amendment, and I conclude. Thank you.
On the amendment, are there any objections? No objections, so ordered. Senator Tidy, will you stay on the floor?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, before I end this, and I didn't have an amendment for it, but I'm hoping one of my colleagues will recognize this, that on page 3, you know, there's a section there that requires the Chamorro Land Trust or the department shall survey or cause to survey this lot. You know, if you want to send it to Department of Land Management to survey, I have no problem. You know, if they have the funding, you know, they can do it. But to ask Chamorro Land Trust, who's struggling already, where this body is trying so hard to find whatever leftover nickels and dimes to help them, I'd like to say nickels, dimes, and dollars, to help them provide infrastructure for these properties. I mean, they're in desperate need of funding. They are in desperate need. And I don't see how we can, you know, force Chamorro Land Trust to fork out money for a survey on this. And as I mentioned earlier, Mr. Speaker, from Special Olympics, they get quite a bit of donations, quite a large amount yearly. So I'm pretty sure they'll be able to they will be able to avail themselves of the funds needed to survey it, or, you know, we could look at Department of Land Management. But to have Chamorro Land Trust do this survey, I think it's something I'm hoping somebody here would make an amendment, you know, to have not have them have to do this, okay? So other than that, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On the bill as amended. On the bill as amended, any senator wanting to speak on the bill? Gentleman from Tamuning, sir, you are recognized. Good morning.
This is Masi, Mr. Speaker. Good morning. I certainly rise in full support of Bill 638, and a couple of comments by the retiring speaker. I also remember during the public hearing, it was actually one of the board members that suggested, and even between the back and forth with Mr. Florig and others from the organization were there, Special Olympics organization, wearing their uniforms, all in support, was, why don't you take this? It's a larger piece of property. and it's better suited, and I think that's exactly how this went down. So certainly a worthy project. I worked very closely with, I call him Chairman Florig, because I think he still remains the chairman over at Guam Housing Corporation. And, you know, they actually had an office at that time. It was the generosity, I believe, of the ITC building that was giving that space to them for free, but I think that ended up changing, and that's why they may be nomads right now, looking for a permanent place to establish an office for the great work that they do. So I support the bill. One of the things that the retiring speaker mentioned, you know, it's kind of interesting because when I had in the early times of 2011 on the 31st, introduced legislation to combine Chamorro Land Trust, ancestral lands, DLM, you know, for efficiency purposes. It worked for a little while, but then it got undone. Well, that was the whole reason. If you look at the staffing patterns, particularly between DLM and Chamorro Land Trust, you know, you got land agents. I mean, it's almost a mirror image. I get it. You know, it's its own program. It's standalone. Efficiencies were had, and that's where they actually had a lot of agreements and surveys were being done. In fact, Mr. Speaker, even till today, from what I understand, you know, your good friend Paul and others over there, they've been surveying property all around Guam, in the Agate Hills and Yamatic, others, to register and registering unregistered lands. And so I don't know that we need to legislate it. I have a feeling that you know, Mr. Bora and Mr. Cruz can get together and, you know, get the guys together. And I know that they still have that working relationship between the two of them. This is not a large parcel of property. I don't think it would take land management, honestly, that long. You know, they're surveying pretty much every day, like I said, for purposes of whatever the government requires or, you know, to register land. So I don't know that we need to legislate it. I think that once this bill passes, they can work together, interagency, and I'm sure Mr. Bora will extend the courtesy over to CLTC. You know, that happens a lot also. You may know, I know one of your favorite mayor up in Barragata from time to time has issues with her constituents, particularly on the rights of way. Internally, you know, there's a lot of, you know, narrow roads, and so a lot of times property owners need to reestablish where the easements are. So when I was there, a phone call here, a phone call there, you know, we get the guys out to do a service for the public that they do. So I have a feeling that this will get done. But I look forward to the passage of this bill, and I look forward to the energy it's going to bring, you know, to the organization with Special Olympics. And I think there's going to be a lot of people rallying around for fundraisers and other things to help them get started and get them a permanent home where they can provide, you know, all of the training and the different things that they do to prepare for their events over the years. So I thank the author, and I also like to ask the author if I could be a co-sponsor. Si Diyos masi, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, sir. On the bill, any senators wishing to speak on the bill? Ranking member, gentle lady from Pago Bay, you recognize, ma'am?
Mananasitulas, Mr. Speaker, and to my colleagues, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak and rise in support of this Bill 6-38 as authored by the good senator from Jigo. I just want to say that when you look at its humble beginnings, when this nonprofit organization was established in 1976, literally starting out with a vision and a dream to have a Special Olympics track for athletes with disabilities. You looked at back then at 150 athletes. Today, based on the years of the events, decades later, and wanting to find a home for these guys, we're looking, Mr. Speaker, at 1,000, if not thousands, of athletes and partners and village support that this program brings to the Guam Special Olympics. And I want to say that I rise in full support of this measure. I want to thank the good author from Jigo for never giving up. I want to thank the organizers the chairman of the Guam Special Olympics, Frank Floric, who continues. I mean, they've asked, he's always told them, I'm going to retire, I'm really going to retire now. And it's, no, you can't. You know, this vision has been there. You've kept the program alive with the organization. And this is what you call a win-win for the island as it relates to giving a home for those athletes who just want to show their strength and their ability to play all the different sports. You know, we have the South Pacific Games. We have, it's now called the Pacific Games, Mr. Speaker. We get the opportunity as athletes to go to represent our island in different sports, but this is really special. This is where our athletes can show their strength, their ability, their agility to play their favorite sport. And as I look at what they train for and what they compete for in year-round sports, from soccer to softball, you know that's my favorite, athletics, aquatics, bowling, football, and what they do for the athletes, the students, and how they represent them, how they represent our island, even in the International Road of Summer Games, Mr. Speaker, is highly commendable. And we have a lot of our volunteers in the community who support the efforts. So, Mr. Chair, I rise in full support, and I want to thank the retiring young gentleman from Tamuning who shared how this property came to play and the support of Chamorro Land Trust, because there have been meetings about this and what was actually offered, what was actually put in legislation, but what was actually offered from the Chamorro Land Trust. So I think, and I believe in my heart, that this is extremely important that we support this measure as a body and give them the training facility they need to support the Special Olympic athletes and the programs that they have for all our Special Olympic athletes. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to support this measure. I will ask the good senator from Chico not to forget my request earlier for asking me to be the co-sponsor on this measure also. Thank you. Sana Maasi.
You're very welcome. On the bill.
Point of information, Mr. Speaker. The
Sure.
Chamorro Land Trust has not made an offer for any property. There is no record of that. There was one member of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission at the hearing who was making a suggestion, but he was very clear, and so was the testimony of the Chamorro Land Trust, that they were unable to give formal testimony on behalf of the commission.
So noted. Thank you very much. On the bill. Good senator from Talifo, will you recognize?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to everyone here in the session hall. I rise in support of Bill 6-38. There are organizations all over the world that have worked with the government, with their respective governments for lands, to support the efforts of the Special Olympics in many people's respective communities. Guam's no different. There's been such an outpouring of support for this particular measure, and I stand with all of them in making sure that my vote counts for this particular transfer. There are some in this room that are absolutely against such measures. This is the first, and will be a series of bills that will do this. Bill 6-38 provides some protection, and I'm hoping some reassurance to those that might be not so inclined to assist. There's a relief valve, if you will, this reversionary clause that we spoke about just a couple of minutes ago. That change in this case is a very useful provision of the law that really is a compromise to the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, and I hope to members in this body. As the Chamorro Land Trust Commission wrestles with its own issues, this particular effort to support the Guam Special Olympics, Mr. Speaker, should be non-controversial. The hundreds of athletes, the scores of volunteers will be greatly served by this particular law. And another change, this new lot 10063, REM PTN-1 in Dededo, 5,300 square meters along Route 1 near Harmon Loop Road. Mr. Speaker, this is consistent with the successful relationships that we have seen that has been established many years ago between the government of Guam and another community sports organization, the Guam Football Association. We continue to witness what can be done when policymakers prioritize unused public land for initiatives that support the broader island community. I can attest, I'm at GFA almost all year round. Through a public-private partnership similar to the one that is in place with the Guam Football Association, I'm confident that Bill 6 will help the Guam Special Olympics strengthen its capacity to support its programs year-round. Mr. Speaker, by providing a safe and conducive place for individuals with disabilities to engage in a variety of health and wellness activities, Bill 6 really is a necessary step in the right direction in our collective effort to support our most vulnerable citizens and their families. And I want to thank the author from GIGO for his work on this, and I also want to ask him if I could also be added as a co-author to Bill 6-38 at this time. I just want to end with this, Mr. Speaker, and just spent just a little bit of time to look at the legislative intent and was brought up during the public hearing and of the original, and I know there people can debate the legislative intent of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. The legislature in Guam intends to support the expansion of the program's eligible beneficiaries to include individuals and their descendants who own land or who ranched, farmed, or otherwise occupied the lands that were taken. The athletes and the families who are a part of this important and special program of the Guam Special Olympics are beneficiaries too. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the bill as amended, are there any senators willing to speak? Gentlelady from Barragata, ma'am, you are recognized. Good morning.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Speaker. Buenas and half a day, everyone. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong support of Bill number 638 COR as amended, which authorizes the transfer of lot number 10063-RAM-PTN-1 in Dededo to dedicate it to Special Olympics Guam for the establishment of permanent administrative office and training facility. This measure is more than just a transfer or an allocation or a land transaction. It is deliberate and meaningful investment in our island's commitment to inclusion, dignity, and opportunity. This bill speaks of compassion and care and support to one of our island's most vulnerable community. For nearly 5 decades, Special Olympics Guam has created pathways for individuals with intellectual disabilities to gain confidence, strengthen life skills, and represent our island through the transformative power of sport. This legislation, Mr. Speaker, provides the physical foundation they have long needed. A place to plan, a place to train, a place to grow, a place to have the reach, the full potential of their mission. The amended version of this bill reflects careful dialogue with the Chamorro Land Trust Commission and incorporates necessary legal safeguards, including a revision clause and explicit protections to preserve the public trust. I, Mr. Speaker, for one, I've always been careful in allocating our land resource here on Guam because we have depleting inventory and we have to make use of it properly for the people of Guam. But this bill addresses concerns about land use. It ensures the continued nonprofit operation of the facility. And this bill designates a site better suited to meet the needs of the organization and the broader community. By supporting this bill, we affirm the value of every single athlete, volunteer, and family who believes in the spirit of inclusion. We help ensure the future generations of athletes have a home for which to thrive. So I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of this measure, and I thank the author of this bill for this meaningful legislation. This legislation truly shows that we care. And I ask the good senator to please include me as a co-sponsor of this bill. And hopefully we all stand behind an organization that has long stood for the people of Guam. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
You're very welcome, ma'am. On the bill, as amended, any other senators wishing to speak? Gentlelady from Barragata, you recognize, ma'am? Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to my colleagues. So in looking at this bill, of course, Special Olympics is a very important organization, and they've actually put a lot of sweat, equity into organizing the Olympics and other activities, and it's all because of the love of our people. And this is definitely an important cause to ensure that Special Olympics has a home. And I was at the public hearing, and the original land that was designated in the bill was not big enough. And they even admitted that it was going to be for offices. And so this land, I think, meets the needs of the organization to include a training facility, and especially in a location where you can call it sports central, right? Near the Dedido complex, you have your soccer fields, tennis, running track, swimming pool. And so this is really an ideal location to build out for the Special Olympics. And it's a great location. The thing that I guess, whenever we deal with land, especially Chamorro Land Trust land, we have to also do our due diligence when it comes to COTC lands. And I do share the sentiments of one of my colleagues that, their vetting and approval of this land actually has been done. And so that is a concern for me, especially with the settlement agreement with the Department of Justice, where HUD, or Department of Justice, actually sued Chamorro Land Trust. And so that's something I'm also concerned about. As we think about transferring land, these are some of the considerations that we need to look at to see if we are breaching anything in regards to that. And that's something that, Special Olympics, I think, should also think about too, is that we do want to transfer this land, but we have to do our due diligence. The other consideration is, I guess, a question for the author of the bill. I know that there's a map that was provided, And can he assure us of the title of this land and how?
The author willing to yield to the question?
Yes, so are we assured of the title of the land?
Mr. Speaker, I'm trying to understand the title. Do you want a copy of the map? I got a copy of the map. I can share
Do
this.
do we know who owns the land? I mean, that's the concern, is there title?
Why don't
Clear-
we,
Is there a clear
well,
title?
take a 1 minute recess. The two of you talk, see if that will help to suffice, and if yeah, pass it out. 1 minute recess. Legislature's back in session. Senator Parrish, you still have the floor, ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for that recess. During that recess, I did get affirmation from the sponsor that is it's a property owned by COTC. Yes. Okay. And so I think, in speaking with members of the board and individuals that have been supporting Special Olympics, they have big plans. And I think this land is really important to getting those plans to making it a reality. From what I understand, they have the opportunity to host an international competition, which will help, bring Guam into the international limelight in regards to Special Olympics. And I think this is a really critical part of that development, and I stand in full support of that and look forward to the success. And I know they're gonna hit the ground running. I think all the community is supporting them. So, Satuas Masi.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the bill as amended, any senator wishing to speak on the bill as amended? Gentleman from Momoto Tumaiti, sir, you are recognized. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Speaker. Thank you. I want to rise up in support of this measure. And while we have an important and necessary discussion about the specifics, the lot sizes, the villages, all the necessary administrative work that goes into it, I just want to talk a little bit about the more human element about this bill. The why and for the whom of who we're doing this. I truly love athletics. Big fan of it my whole life. Even as I went into adulthood, still a sports fan, always will be. And looking back on my life, I have a greater appreciation for the role that played in shaping me into the person I am today. I've always heard the term, idle hands are the devil's playground, and sports kept me an energetic kid, otherwise who could have been getting into trouble, being unproductive. Be productive. Do something worthwhile with my time. Learn some skills, gain some fellowship, strengthen my body, my spirit, my soul. And so, when I grew up in the world, I always took for granted that this was available to everybody. It wasn't until I had been exposed to the Special Olympics that I'd really come to understand that it wasn't available to everybody. That the things that I had taken for granted, some people didn't have. Like, I love playing basketball. Basketball was the crucible I grew up in. If you're on Guam, you know there's a basketball court basically within walking distance of every village, every person around. I personally, me and my friends, we grew up in the 90s, and we had a particular love for the old cartoon Pokemon. And in Pokemon, you know, the intrepid adventurers would go around to other gyms and challenge the gym masters and, you know, get better at their sport. And so we did the same thing growing up, you know, and it was a lot of fun. It was quite amazing to be able to go around to every village, challenge the local players at those gyms, make new friends, develop new rivalries, learn new skills, get just a little bit better. And I was able to do that everywhere on the island. And so it breaks my heart when I think about these fierce competitors in the Special Olympics who can't just roll it over to any basketball court on the island and practice the way we all can. So I think it's important that we keep this space aside for them, to give them the ability to train, the ability to have a space to call their own, because it's tough out there. It's tough out there, and making sure that these athletes have a safe space to learn lessons of success, in failure, in perseverance, in not giving up, and to have it in an environment where the stakes are just a friendly game, where at the end we all say good game. That is the best crucible to learn these incredible, incredible skills. And so it's for that reason that I wholeheartedly support this legislation. I think a project like this is one of the most worthy things we can use some of our precious land for. Societies are not judged by how we take care of those at the top, but for those who are most vulnerable, for those who have less, for those who may have different struggles that we might not all understand, but one that we should always be compassionate to. And so, as we continue this discussion about the X's and O's, the P's and Q's, the dotting of the I's and the crossing of the T's, let's remember that there's some real heart behind what we're trying to achieve here. And so, I truly appreciate the sponsor of this legislation. I would like to request to be a co-sponsor as well, at his behest. And I ask all my colleagues to please vote yes on this very compassionate legislation, one that is not just a benefit for this community, it's a benefit for all of us. This benefit makes our island stronger. This puts Guam first. This is the right thing to do. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the bill as amended, are there any senators wishing to speak on the bill? Gentlelady from Jonior, you're recognized. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, colleagues. I rise in support of this bill. We're all in support of Special Olympics. We want them to succeed, and they've done an excellent job over the years. And also, those before us have made it a very clear government policy to support Special Olympics. We know that the government of Guam, as a matter of policy, has made its facilities available, from schools to parks and rec facilities, including swimming pools, and assisted. The agencies have assisted as well. And that's in large part thanks to the coordination of the Special Olympics management and leadership who really have done a very good job. And it's really grown from even when I was in high school and assisting with that to now as an adult participating. It's really very rewarding. And so I want to thank them for leading all of us in this effort. According to the testimony of the CEO of the Special Olympics, Mr. Floric, the president CEO, they needed an office. They, according to him, The place would be used for training, in-class training of officials, even parents. It'd be a place where we would be doing a lot of volunteer training as well as athletic training on the rules of a Special Olympics, the actual physical training. We've set that aside, and in my testimony, I mentioned we've made arrangements, and we work closely with both the military and Gulf Guam areas, and it's worked for 49 years, so we hope to continue that. The bill it is expanded now to, instead of 30,000 square feet to 58,000 square feet. And it looks like now, because it's bigger, they may be able to use it instead of just for a classroom and in office training for additional purposes. So I don't object to that. I think it's certainly doable to find government land for the Special Olympics, and there are probably many options if we had consulted with the Department of Land Management. But it appears that we did not consult with the Department of Land Management as to any land that is suitable. And it seems we are entertaining a bill to transfer land out of the Chamorro Land Trust without consulting the Chamorro Land Trust Board or getting their input. And just as we support the Special Olympics, its goals, the children that it serves, we cannot turn our eyes on those beneficiaries who's waiting for Chamorro Land Trust residential and agricultural leases, especially the residential leases, while we face this housing shortage and so many poverty issues on Guam. And so I just say, it's in our best interest to work together instead of pitting parties against each other. And I think that we could do that if we were willing to take the time and really do that hard work. But I've been checking myself on this property that has been substituted in the bill. They're no longer talking about the property across from JFK that used to be the Volk Rehab. They're now talking about property up in Dedido, kind of across, it's next to GTA, across the old Harmon Flea Market, and as one of my colleagues said, very close to the GFA and the DPR facilities up there. So I do agree, it's a nice place for Special Olympics to use. I've also, according to some at CLTC, this property is not in their inventory. And so if it's government of Guam property that we're transferring for the Special Olympics, I have no objection to this. I was going to suggest that we reduce it to the amount that they had originally asked for. But after talking to the sponsor, he's convinced me that they can expand their plans and they will be able to do that with this larger piece of property. Again, my concern is this is a dangerous precedent we set to do land bills without following the laws regarding land bills, where we are supposed to do very due diligence to make sure we know land management's position on it, actual owners, Chamorro Land Trust position, if we're going to take things out of their inventory. That's not what it was set up for. We should be very, very diligent in doing that. But again, I'd like to make one amendment to the bill in light of what may be correct, and that is the one amendment is page 2, line 7 to 10. And that is just to strike the words from the Chamorro Land Trust. And this is in the intent of the bill, so there's no real impact, and it just says, it will then say, therefore, it is the intent of Y Legislature in Guahan to transfer by grant lot number to the Special Olympics Guam organization to establish their administrative office and training facility in support of Guam's athletes and Special Olympics program. So it would just remove that reference.
Okay. On the amendment, labeled AB6 TMT L7-10P2, page 2, line 7 to 10, is to strike out the words from the Chamorro Land Trust. On the amendment, gentleman from Montego.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have no objection to this because it's in the intent. It's not the meat of the bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. On the amendment, any other senators wishing to speak? On the amendment? No other senators? Senator Talai? Ma'am? No objections or anything? Go ahead. You want to close
Oh,
it?
I'll waive closing on that.
Okay. On the amendment, are there any objections? No objections? So ordered.
My other amendments have been withdrawn, and the one regarding who's going to do the survey, the sponsor of the bill has assured us that he has an amendment to do that, put that responsibility back to land management, so I'm going to withdraw that amendment as well. No need for me to do that. I'll let the sponsor do that. And again, I want to thank the Special Olympics for all their work. I want to assure the beneficiaries of the Chamorro Land Trust that this is not coming out of their inventory if their records are correct, and that so hopefully it's a win-win and we can continue with assisting the Special Olympics in this regard. I just wish we had the Department of Land Management and Chamorro Land Trust testimony. Again, the bill has been completely changed from what the bill that we had a public hearing on. But that's, you know, our issues to resolve. As far as the Special Olympics, we're here to assist them, and so here we are. And I'm in full support of that.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the bill as amended, any other senator? Vice Speaker, sir, you are recognized. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to my colleagues. On the issue of the Chamorro Land Trust, we did ask them to come down, and they did not because, according to them, that they don't provide testimony on issues when their board wasn't complete. And I did ask whether they had any discussions on this bill in the last meeting, and I was told that the meeting of May 8th was all about leases, and the May 22nd was commercial property, and all other items that was determined by the board to be a priority. So an invite did go out, and for them to come to the public hearing, and also to provide any testimony, but they did not because they seemed that it wasn't a priority at the time. But that being said, Mr. Speaker, I rise in full support of Bill number 6-38, a bill to transfer Lot 10063-REM-PTN-1 to Special Olympics Guam for the development of their administrative office and training facility. First, this measure recognizes the exceptional value that Special Olympics Guam has brought to our island for almost 50 years. Their commitment to empowering individuals with disabilities through sports is a vital part of building a compassionate community. By providing a permanent home, we affirm our support for their dignity and athletic excellence. Secondly, this property transfer will enhance program delivery. Currently, Special Olympics Guam operates in a space that has limitations. It is a temporary accommodation for impactful programs that we know will serve and benefit our loved ones for decades to come. And when I say our loved ones, I'm sure perhaps that everyone in this legislative hall, perhaps this building, has a loved one that participates in Special Olympics, is an athlete in Special Olympics, because I know I do. My nieces participate in Special Olympics. And it brings them, their spirit out when they know that they can go out there and be a challenger in the different sports that they participate in. It's not about winning, it was just about participating. And like the good colleague from MTM has stated, Senator Parkinson, it's about the human factor. And perhaps we as a government have failed when we build parks and playgrounds, because we don't have parks and playgrounds that are wheelchair accessible or that are friendly to those with disabilities. We spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants that are given to this island to rebuild playgrounds at the schools. Do you see those playgrounds that are ADA accessible? Absolutely not. And thank you, Senator Parkinson, for bringing back the human factor into what we do here. Because sometimes we don't all understand. But when you see the glow in their eyes and the smile on their faces, it goes to show that they're in their happiest time, their proudest moments. And even if they don't win, at least give them that ability to try. A dedicated facility will strengthen year-round programming, athletic development, and volunteer coordination, directly benefiting hundreds of local athletes, their families, and volunteers. At the last Special Olympics Guam up at Okadu, there wasn't then 50, 100, 200. There were several hundred people up there, not thousands, supporting this event. Not one of those volunteers up there get paid. They do it for the love of those who are not able. This initiative aligns with a broader public health and educational goals. Sports provides opportunity for physical fitness, mental well-being, and life skills. By supporting Special Olympics Guam, we are investing in a healthier, more resilient community by demonstrating that all Guam citizens, regardless of ability, deserve access to opportunity and support. And that's what this body needs to do. Yes, it's land. I understand. But did you see the map? Did you see what is currently on that piece of property? Junk. Junk that has to be cleared out by Special Olympics Guam. And perhaps what we need to do in this body is start holding those accountable that put junk all over this island on Chamorro Land Trust property. Throughout this island on Chamorro Land Trust property is there nothing but junk. Those properties that are left vacant, people take advantage of it. They throw trash on it. Moreover, the establishment of a permanent home on a choice parcel with high visibility symbolizes more than human and physical infrastructure. It becomes a beacon of our people's commitment to empowering those with disabilities. A well-designed facility in such a location can serve not only as a hub for Special Olympics, but as a welcoming space where individuals can train, grow, and receive related services with pride and dignity. I urge my colleagues to support this measure. And let's help lay the foundation for a future rooted in opportunity and excellence. This is more than just a land transfer. It is a powerful statement by our values and vision. By voting in favor of this bill, we affirm our commitment to Special Olympics Guam and help establish a lasting foundation for their vital work and dreams of our island's athletes. In the 49 years that Special Olympics Guam has been here on our beautiful island, they have not asked anything of this government. Thank you, my colleagues, and I hope for your support and vote on Bill 6-38. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Speaker. On the bill as amended, any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? Gentleman from Tamuning, you are recognized, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, colleagues. I stand up in full support of Bill 6-38. You know, Mr. Speaker, as the previous gentleman pointed out, that the 49 years, so actually 2026 will be 50 years, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Special Olympics will have a permanent home. You know, it started out in 1976. So 1976 and 1990, I think it is, the faculty and staff were the coordinators of Special Olympics when it first came to Guam under, and if I'm not mistaken, First Lady at the time, Madeline Bordallo, was the main coordinator. And when I returned back to Guam in 1991, working for the, of course, the Ada Bloss administration, I was their representative to the Special Olympics. I worked hand in hand with your mom, Special Olympics, along with Carol Piercy, Special Olympics. And we often met at Chief Brody Memorial School. And annually, of course, they had these Special Olympic events, the track and field and bowling and swimming and things of that nature. And it has grown enormously. And as the previous gentleman has spoken, that they never asked for much. They've never asked for anything, really. These are athletes, special athletes, and deserve a home, deserve a permanent home, deserve to be given their home, to be able to develop out and develop their skills, their athletic skills. You know, often, you know, in athletics, this gentleman from Talavoa mentioned, I think on a daily basis, he's up at GFA, the soccer field. Athletes in Guam have a rough time anyway. So imagine special athletes even have a bigger hill, bigger mountain to climb. So I'm glad that this body, the 38th Guam Legislature, sees that and realizes that. And so, again, as they celebrate their 50th anniversary in 2026, they'll be on their way anyway for their permanent home. and hope in the very near future that we'll see that area developed out for our special athletes and the volunteers that come together, again, in support of our special athletes. I just want to ask again my colleagues, and I don't think anyone is going to oppose the bill, but thank all volunteers for Special Olympics, and of course, all previous administrations since 1976, the inception, of course, Special Olympics here in Guam. I encourage, again, a positive vote on Bill 6-38. And I as well ask the author to be included as a co-sponsor. Primo, are you listening? You turn on your hearing aid, Finn? Thank you very much. That said, Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Again, I stand in full support of Bill 6-38. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator, and good morning. Any other senator on the bill as amended? On the bill as amended? Any other senator willing to speak? Gentleman from Zonia, sir, you are recognized.
Mr. Speaker, and good morning again to my colleagues and the people of Guam. Thank you for watching this very marathon session that we're having. I'm also hearing we're going to go late again tonight, right? So thank you. And thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to speak on the bill. You know, I was looking through the committee report as I attended the public hearing, and you know, with these abridged committee reports, I think I spoke for a few minutes, but in this committee report it says here, Senator Chris Barnett mentioned a constant raid on Chamorro Land Trust Commission land and asked about training facilities. And you know, as one of the retiring speakers had said, there are many measures in the 38th Guam Legislature that I believe are raids on Chamorro Land Trust Commission land. I even believe there's a bill recently introduced that seeks to raid critical funding that the Chamorro Land Trust Commission has. But I don't necessarily want to get into that. As I said, there's going to be plenty of opportunity to stand and speak on those matters. But you know, the sentence also says I asked about training facilities, and for me, in supporting or not supporting this effort, it was always about what are we going to do for these Special Olympians, you know, and how can we assure that they have facilities to train in. And so that was kind of what I asked Mr. Florig, Frank Florig, about was, you know, is this property, and at the time it was the property across from John F. Kennedy High School, is this property going to be used for training facilities? And the response that we got was they were looking primarily for administrative offices, and then there would be some classrooms in these administrative offices that would then be used for training. And then Mr. Florig also went on to say that they were seeking agreements. You know, they're very friendly with the Guam Department of Education schools, so they've been able to use a lot of the facilities for, you know, practice, training, storage even. And so that was kind of the gist of my questions, was basically if we're going to transfer a parcel out of the Government of Guam inventory, then I wanted to really kind of make sure that it was going to benefit the Special Olympians, you know, that we all know and love. Special Olympians like our friends Nick, Chris, Nick's sister Ratana, who's just love that girl, Elijah, Rico. I mean, we've done, you know, long before I was a senator, my colleague, Senator Sabrina Salas-Mentanani, and I and all of our friends at the KUM Care Force, I mean, we were just out with all the Special Olympics events. You know, I've hosted the track and field event for as long as I can remember. I forgot already how long it's been. And there are just so many great events under the Special Olympics umbrella. You know, they recently added bowling, and I was able to attend a bowling event last year. They've also got badminton. Softball has been very successful for them. And I think for me, when we attend these events, whether it's the track and field or the trench challenge that we did with a few of our friends from the Special Olympics organization. One thing that I really take away is, you know, if you're on your way to the Ukadu track to attend the track and field Special Olympics event, one of the good things about it, this is like the only time traffic is good, is how much traffic there is heading into Ukadu, because you just have so many people from so many different organizations, you know, businesses, just people who just want to show up and lend a hand. And so there's a lot of time to kind of sit and think about, you know, whatever's on your mind, right? But once you set foot on that field, for me anyway, you know, all the stress of the legislation, you know, colleagues giving you a headache or just, you know, trying to make ends meet, all that just kind of washes away, because you see in these Special Olympians such a joy for life. You show up there and whatever we're going through, it just pales when you see how happy these Special Olympians are, how happy they are that these events and this great organization takes the time and takes the effort to do such meaningful things for them. And one of the parts I really love is when we do the parade of teams. And if you've been to the Special Olympics track and field event, that's where you have every Guam Department of Education school usually attends that. And then you've got the, you know, the charter school partners. Some of the private schools attend. You've got ICANN resources. You've just got so many great entities that's full of these Special Olympians who are so excited to compete. And it's just smiles everywhere. You know, so when you show up and you see this joy of life, and that saying, you know, be brave in the attempt, that's not just a saying for Special Olympics. That's some of the best advice you could give in life. No matter what you do, no matter what you try, no matter what challenges you face, just be brave in the attempt. And that for me is very important. So as we talk about the human element, because this is about some very extraordinary and very special humans in our Special Olympians, I think it's great that we're doing this measure. I just only, again, wish that we could do more in many ways, you know, that we could provide these facilities for these Special Olympians. A friend of mine, Miss Roberta, she texted me last night and asked me, hey, where do you stand on Bill 6, you know? And she has a son with special needs who routinely competes at Special Olympics. And, you know, we had a talk, and she was telling me about, oh, if you go to Hawaii or you go to certain states, like their training facilities for Special Olympics, sometimes they have a pool, but, you know, sometimes they're in a warehouse. They do different events like powerlifting, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, sadly, we don't have that, unfortunately, in this bill. But, you know, I'm very encouraged that Mr. Florek and all the great people at Special Olympics do what they can to get out to these different facilities and to really expand kind of the number of sports and activities that these Special Olympians are able to participate in. I mean, you know, it was just track and field way back, and then, like I said, we've seen softball, badminton, bowling, and so many other great sports. So, you know, I told Ms. Roberta, I said, you know, I'm kind of conflicted because in the public hearing, Commissioner Garrido, you know, outside of his official capacity as a Chamorro Land Trust commissioner, had talked about another parcel of land. And that parcel of land maybe would have had some space for the facilities to train the athletes. So I told her I was a little conflicted. And, you know, basically what she told me was she has an interest in the Special Olympics. She sent me a picture of her son. He won 2 gold medals at the last track and field event. And she said, you know, if we're going to dedicate this attention and this engagement to Special Olympics, then we should also make sure that it's going to benefit the Special Olympians. And so, you know, I trust Mr. Florek. I know that they're not getting a parcel where they could have a, you know, a baseball field, and due to our small land inventory, I think that's just, you know, it is what it is. But Mr. Florek is very committed to working with, you know, the Guam Football Association, the Guam Department of Education. He's got some great partners up at Ukadu High School and landlords of that facility. So rise in support of the bill, and I'm just very grateful that Special Olympics has been around for as long as they have, and we're the same age, 50 years old, half a century. And I wish them really, 50 more years of great work into our community. And thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to rise in support of the bills. It's very, very close to my heart. And for the people watching, if you haven't been to a Special Olympics event, just go, and you're going to just feel that real simple joy of life. You know what I mean? A lot of times we go through so many things, but when you show up at these fields and you see these athletes, and just how happy that we're doing all of this for them, from the parade of teams to the lighting of the torch, where we have, our law enforcement partners running from Naval Station, and they run all the way to Ukadu Field, and then at the very end, there's a very Special Olympian who actually gets to light the torch, and so as I look at the bill, those are the thoughts that I'm having. I'm not thinking about the lot number or this or that. I'm really just thinking about these smiling faces that constitute this community of Special Olympians, and all of the volunteers and the great people who give so generously, not just financially, but give generously with their time. So Sidus Masi again, Mr. Speaker, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the bill, gentle lady from Jigo, ma'am, you are recognized. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to the people of Guam who are watching on YouTube. Be brave in the attempt. That is something that I live by. It's one of my mottos. Be brave in the attempt, and especially since taking a seat here in the 38th Guam Legislature, I am trying to be bold. I am trying to be brave, despite some of the shade that keeps coming my way for whatever reason. But this bill, I fully support it, 100%. Like some of the previous speakers, I've attended many events by Special Olympics Guam, and I have participated side by side with our Special Olympians. And this bill really, to me, yes, it is about land, but it is also about opportunity. And I just urge my colleagues to please support this bill. That's it. Simple. No brainer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Short and sweet. Any other senator? Well, is there any other senator? No, I'm sorry, guys. You've all used up your time. The main sponsor to the bill. You can close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have one amendment before I wrap it up, or actually two amendments, okay? The first one is in the drive. This was proffered by Senator Tello. Actually, she said, Joe, we need to change this. And that's why we're changing it. I said, yes, we do. It is to strike and to lead in section 2 of the bill, either the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, strike that out and just make it be the responsibility of Department of Land Management to do the survey. And it's on line 9, page 3. Very simple, just a strike.
On the amendment. Yes, ma'am. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand in full support of this, of course, and I thank the good author of the legislation and the author of this amendment for making this change. As we all know, that Chamorro Land Trust is struggling for funding for their infrastructure and for their people, and at least relieving this burden on them. I greatly appreciate it. So I thank you so much for this amendment. Thank you.
You're very welcome. So, Senator, any other senators? Good senator from Tumuning, sir.
So, short and sweet, Mr. Speaker, I support the amendment. Joey will go see Joe, and Joe will talk to your good friend Paul, and it'll get done. Sidus Masi.
Sounds good to me. Okay, on the amendment, no objections to the amendment, so ordered. Sir, continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I've heard from all the colleagues, and I want to make sure that everyone is included in the co-sponsor. We started out with Senator Tina has been hitting me up, and Senator Tello, Senator Chris Drainers, and you know what? Everyone, because it's about the Olympians. And it's like they've always said in the oath. Senator Burnett brought it up. Let me win, but if I cannot win, Let me be brave in the attempt. And that's what we've been doing here. We need to do this for the Olympians and for the people of Guam. And with that, I close and ask that the bill be sent to the third reading file, or to the voting file.
First, we deal with the amendment.
Huh?
On the amendment to include all members that are here, that we have a standing rule that says you have to be here to be included as a.
Okay, well, I don't think, and even Sean Gomatato wanted to be included. So, I mean, not Sean, Senator Vince Bora, but not a problem, Speaker.
Okay. Then we have to stick to our standing rules, okay? So on the amendment to include all members present to be included as co-sponsors, no objection? So ordered. On your motion to move to third reading?
Please, if it can be moved to the third reading.
On the motion to move Bill 6-38 COR as amended to the third reading. Any objections? No objections, so ordered. Next bill. Bill 18-38 COR. Senator Sabina. Floor is Paris. Gentlemen, ma'am, you have the floor. Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to my colleagues. So I'd like to move Bill 18-38 into the third reading file, and I wish to discuss.
Can you go ahead and read the title of the bill, please?
The title is An Act to Amend Section 5707A of Article 12, Chapter 5, Title 5, Guam Code Annotated, relative to the procedure for judicial review of decisions made by the public auditor in procurement appeals.
You can continue.
Thank you. So Bill 18-38 seeks procedural reform of judicial review of decisions made by the Office of the Public Accountability and Procurement Appeals by requiring that these procedures be treated similar to judicial review for other administrative agencies under the administrative adjudication law. So as it stands currently, the judicial review process for decisions made by the OPA in regard to procurement appeals is treated as a civil action between two parties in which the OPA is named as a defendant in the case, which can then expose the OPA to unnecessary, unwarranted litigation, expense from hiring legal counsel, filing motions, briefs, and discovery requirements. Under the administrative adjudication law, the procedure for judicial review of an administrative decisions generally follows a different process. Instead of filing civil actions, the party seeking judicial review submits a writ of review that is governed by 7 GCA Chapter 31. So the existing judicial review process diverts financial and operational and human resources from the OPA in order to respond to civil action that could take years potentially, and court proceedings which could be utilized for other needs. According to the fiscal note, the estimated cost is between about $15,000 to $20,000 per year for the last 3 years due to few appeals in OPA procurement on OPA procurement decisions. This amount would have been a lot higher if the OPA did not recuse herself or itself from a high-profile procurement appeal that has been litigated for the past 12 years. The amendment to the law proposed in Bill 1838 would not alter the standard of review, which is already statutorily defined in Section 5004 in Chapter 5, Title 5, which states the following: any determination of an issue or finding by fact by the public auditor shall be final and conclusive unless arbitrary and capricious, fraudulent, clearly erroneous, or contrary to law. In other words, the agency's decision is given deference, which is a federal norm. The procedural reform proposed by Bill 18-38 also could potentially decrease delays with the elimination of the discovery process, which can take 3 to 6 months, that currently exists with civil action. notwithstanding the integrity of the procurement system, would be upheld on two accounts. Firstly, the courts could still require more information be gathered and remand the case back to the public auditor. Secondly, it would disincentivize those protesting contractors who know the lengthiness of resolving protests in order to retain a contract, and thus preventing the government of Guam from selecting the lowest bid. Bill 18-38 proposes to amend the process of civil action to a petition for judicial review that already exists in the administrative adjudication law. So no new procedural rules would be needed to be developed. In other words, the procedures to process a petition for judicial review conforms to existing rules dealing with writs of review governed under 7 GCA Chapter 31. So I want to thank the public auditor, Attorney Thompson, for creating the white paper in support of this legislation that proposes judicial review by requiring these procedures be treated through the writs of review. And Bill 18-38 would prevent diverting necessary resources of the public auditor used to respond to litigation and thereby reducing operational costs and allowing them to fulfill their mandates effectively and efficiently. That increases transparency and accountability on how vital public funds are spent in service to our community. It could also potentially facilitate quicker disposition of protests lodged in the courts and simultaneously uphold the integrity of the procurement system. I would like to thank my co-sponsors, Senator Taitagui, Senator Terlahi, and Senator Barnett for their support. And I ask my colleagues for their support. Saduas Masi.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the bill, are there any objections or are there any amendments to the bill? Anybody want to speak on the bill? Briefly? Gentlelady from Jonia? Okay, while she's getting, gentleman from Talafofo, you can start.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to offer brief remarks on Bill 18. As we just heard a couple minutes ago, through the bill's fiscal note, the comments received from the Office of the Public Auditor on Section 2 of a similar bill introduced during the 37th Guam Legislature, Bill 328-37. The current judicial review process causes the OPA to expend its budget in order to secure legal services if and when the agency is a named defendant in a civil suit in the Superior Court of Guam. Our public auditor, former Speaker of this body, and a former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Guam, B.J. Cruz, reported expenditures, as we heard, of $15,000 to $20,000 per year for the last 3 years, due to only a few decision appeals to the Superior Court of Guam. Mr. Speaker, unlike Bill 18-38, Bill 328-37 included a section authorizing the public auditor to file in the Superior Court of Guam a petition for a writ of mandate to force the implementation of recommendations issued by the OPA. Through a message on vetoed Bill 328-37, the Governor of Guam agreed with the judicial review related section, however argued that while the legislature authorized the public auditor to go to court to push for implementation of their recommendations, the governor must have final authority over the executive branch, the Committee on Rules over the legislature, and the Chief Justice over the judiciary. Mr. Speaker, in my research on Bill 18, I learned that based on testimony provided on the 37th Guam Legislature's version of this similar proposal, while it is standard practice to name a public agency as a respondent in seeking judicial review of other Guam administrative actions, it is not standard practice to require the agency to be named as a defendant in a civil action, nor to permit discovery in such legal matters. With that, Mr. Speaker, I look forward to trying to understand more or hearing additional perspectives from my colleagues here on this bill including legal options, if any, which may be available to the OPA in the event the agency challenges or otherwise questions the appropriateness of being named as a defendant in a civil lawsuit involving an OPA decision. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You're very welcome. On the bill, gentlelady from Georgia, you're recognized, ma'am. Good morning.
Just Masi, I rise in support of this bill. Again, this was a similar bill vetoed last year, but I'm glad the author brought it back and that the committee was able to move this to the floor because this is one of those things. It's like they want us to reform the procurement law. This does that in a very substantial way. Its goal is to make things more efficient, make an appeal more, take less time, take less resources of the public auditor's office, and that is going to let us get on with our procurements sooner, hopefully. That's the goal. And the public auditor briefed this entirely for us, gave us a white paper on it. It was opposed by the Department of Administration. They want a full trial on all the merits. They want the public auditor to defend his decision as opposed to the contractors, the one who won and the one who's appealing, to be the parties involved in that. They pointed out that, for example, if the public auditor had not recused herself in the DFS versus LOTI procurement appeal, the OPA would have been the one defending GIAA's actions, and not the way it is now, where LOTI is reimbursing GIAA for its legal expenses. So that would have been tens of millions of dollars, perhaps. In 12 years, the case was litigated, he talked about. So again, it still allows for appeals, so this is good. Parties can still appeal if they feel they've been wronged in the procurement process. It just takes the OPA out of it and makes the judge review an administrative decision by the OPA, similar to their review of other administrative agency decisions. So again, thank you to the author for this bill, and I hope that this will not be vetoed this time.
Thank you very much, ma'am. On the bill, gentleman from Georgia, you're recognized. Good morning, sir.
Mr. Speaker, good morning again to the people of Guam. Just want to rise in strong support, the most strongest support for this measure and its author, who continues to do great work with our procurement law and making things more expedient and streamlined. Because we have a good procurement law, when we want to use it. And I definitely rise in support. I spoke on this bill in the last legislature. It was vetoed, and I'm just hoping now, as the people of Guam watch the Republican majority in the 38th Guam Legislature, I think we found common ground, at least with our words, in support of the good efforts of the public auditor, former Speaker Benjamin Cruz. I mean, we've had the finance chair speak very highly of him. Yourself, Mr. Speaker, have not just in this term, but in the prior term, really supported the efforts that he's done with the Office of Public Accountability. And I think as the people of Guam look at this new majority, they're yearning for the checks and balances, and I'm anticipating that this bill might be vetoed again. So when it comes back down to what we call the People's House, I hope that we're steadfast and constant in our support of the measure, assuming it passes, of course, Mr. Speaker. So I want to also thank the public auditor, BJ Cruz, for the good work that he does. And many times he's churning out these audits. I mean, going back as far as the pandemic, when we read a very scathing audit about the quarantine facilities and how they were procured. I'll just use the term procured very loosely there. And you know, we have to appreciate the work that the public auditor does, but I think more importantly, we have to ensure that these findings in these audits are acted on, you know, whether, you know, by us here in the body taking, you know, corrective measures through legislation or oversight of the respective agencies that fall under the 38th Guam Legislature's purview, or by ensuring that the authorities, whether they be, you know, the law enforcement or the Attorney General's office, really look at these findings, and if there's a merit to pursue, you know, a case in the court, then I say do it. I feel like, again, we have common ground in looking at some of these audits and some of these findings and some of these recommendations, and then, you know, nothing ever happens, right? I mean, whether it's the textbooks, the GDOE, the overtime with the Federal Programs Office issue, the procurement, again, of the quarantine facilities. The Office of Public Accountability has been very, very constant and consistent with the good work that they do to expose, you know, sometimes it's a smoking gun of the corruption, right? The party. Sometimes it's, you know, little fixes that the OPA believes can, you know, improve government processes and efficiencies. And so I thank the public auditor and the good folks, you know, to include Chelo Vince over there at the Office of Public Accountability, Siduos Masi and Donkaluna Siduos Masi. The biggest thank you for the great work that they do. And again, I just want to commend the author, my good friend, the good senator from Barrigada, for her diligent, consistent, thoughtful work on these issues as well as the environment. And I'm very grateful that I was allowed to be included as a co-sponsor on this measure. So good luck and Godspeed with this bill, because I have a feeling it may be coming back down to us here at a later date for possible override attempt. So Siduos Masi, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to rise and speak in support of this bill.
Thank you, sir. On the bill, are there any other speakers on the bill? No other speakers on the bill? The gentlelady from Tumuninga recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand in full support of Bill 18. It was sent to my committee, and we had the opportunity to look through it, and we didn't provide any changes to the bill because it made those changes when a bill was previously introduced in the 37 to address any concerns. So moving forward, I think I thank the author for, you know, looking that forward to her forward insight to understanding the concerns on the other side and finding a balance here. But it all boils down to, Mr. Speaker, is the fact that the Office of Public Auditor, you know, excessively using funds that drag him into hearings constantly is actually a waste of funds, because he went through the whole process. They've come up with the findings. And once that is completed, then if anyone has the opportunity then to go to the courts to, in a sense, repeal, they can do so. But in this manner, when they do that, having this review commission, you know, takes it a little to a level almost like the Civil Service Commission, per se, you know, to have them review the documents. And I think this is another way of inafamalik, you know, you provide that one step before, you know, the big fight that goes on, and to find a happy medium. And I think I thank the good author for looking into this and ensuring and keeping up with the intent and moving forward again in this term to find some kind of balance and clarity for both sides. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much. On the bill. On the bill. Ma'am, you would like to close on the bill? Did you want to speak? Okay. The gentlelady from Barrigada, you can speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in strong support of Bill number 1838 COR. which seeks to amend Section 5707A of Title V of the Guam Code annotated to bring much-needed clarity and consistency to the judicial review process for procurement appeals. Under current law, the Office of Public Accountability is treated as a defendant in civil litigation when its decisions in procurement appeals are challenged, an approach that is both inconsistent with how other administrative decisions are reviewed and unnecessarily burdensome. As we've heard through public testimony and legal analysis, this process forces the OPA to divert critical financial and personal resources away from its core mission of government accountability in order to defend its decision in court. This bill corrects that imbalance by establishing a judicial review process similar to what is used for other agencies, such as the Civil Service Commission. It allows for the filing of a petition for judicial review, an approach that reduces legal costs, streamlines case handling, and brings procedural consistency to Guam's administrative law framework. Most importantly, this reform allows the OPA to focus on what it does best: safeguarding public funds and ensuring transparency in government procurement. It is a cost-conscious, practical, and policy-sound measure that has earned the support of the OPA, the judiciary, and many of our colleagues. I thank the author of the bill and the chair for moving this legislation forward, and I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of Bill number 18-38 COR. And I'd like to ask the good author to please include me as a co-sponsor. Let us take this step to make our government more efficient, more accountable, and more focused on the priorities that matter to our people. Siduos Masi, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. On the bill. On the bill. Ma'am, you can close now. Don't forget the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you to my colleagues for their strong support. And at this time, I'd like to add co-sponsors. I'd like to add Senator Shelley V. Calvo as a co-sponsor. Speaker Frank Blas Jr. as a co-sponsor. Senator Tina Rose Munia Barnes. Senator Sabrina Salas Matanani. And if anybody else would like to be a co-sponsor, just let me know. Okay, so I think, I thank my colleagues.
Let's dispose of the sponsorship
Okay,
first, okay?
yes.
On the motion for the sponsors, any objection? No objection. Okay, ma'am.
So thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I'm not one to brag, but I was told to do so. I had a very calm closing, but so someone in the law field, I think, first of all, I want to thank the public auditor and his team to develop this legislation, because I think without their expertise, we would be continuing this process. And so what I've been told is that this is the biggest reform in 10 years for procurement. And if we think about all those protests that have been held back, Simon Sanchez, GPA, all of these protests could have been expedited. And we know, we felt the impact of these, especially with, like GPA, for instance. The OPA decided on the case. The courts affirmed their decision. But what happened? The vendor left because it just took too long. The protest took too long. We could have had the solar panels up and running to help reduce the cost of electricity here on Guam. It would have helped. But because of the protests, we had to suffer. And then now we have Simon Sanchez again. And so this bill is critical because we don't want another protest to delay the rebuild of Simon Sanchez. Our people have waited way too long. Our teachers, our students are crying. They're praying that there is no protest. And so this bill is critical. It's critical to help our government do what it needs to do and act expeditiously. It is so sad to see our procurement tied up because there are vendors out there, that contractors out there know that they can tie it up because they can keep their contract, even though they are not the lowest bidder, the winning bidder. That is a shame. And so I really want to thank the public auditor, Attorney Thompson and the team, to really figure this one out. That we can't keep doing what we're doing, and they put together a white paper for this bill to align judicial review as other agencies have done. So not only will it help reduce the time and the cost having to do with protest, it would get the services and the construction and whatever the needs the government requires done more quickly. And this is what upholds the procurement system, the integrity of the procurement system, because we don't want to incentivize those that game it. For too long we have suffered. We've heard this time and time again from various agencies, Guam Memorial Hospital. You know, what can you do to speed up the protest? What can you do? Lift, there's so many things that can be done, and this is one measure that we can do today to address protest delays. So I thank my colleagues for their support. I thank the public auditor and his team who found a solution. Situ's Masi.
Thank you very much, ma'am. On the bill, okay, to move the bill to third reading.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to move Bill 18-38 into the third reading file.
I remember that, don't worry, okay? On the bill to move to third reading. Any objections? No objections, so ordered. Okay. Next bill, Bill 20-38, COR. Senator Titigu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to my colleagues and the people of Guam, I would like to move and place Bill 20-38 COR as amended by the Committee on Public Safety, Emergency Management, and Guam National Guard, introduced by myself, which is an act to amend 58109 and add 58110 of Chapter 58, and to repeal Chapter 58B of Division 3, Title 10, Guam Code Annotated, as enacted by Public Law 37-47 into the third reading file, and I would like to speak on the bill, Mr. Speaker.
You can proceed then. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, before I begin, I would like to thank the good chairman on the Committee of Public Safety, Emergency Management, and the Guam National Guard for his staff for hearing this bill and the work they did to have the bill heard and also have a markup meeting and report it out. It's not easy to do this, as you know, I've never been in a majority where we had to do these committees, but I do know that one thing's for sure, It takes a lot of work and to do these committees the right way and ensure that everyone has an opportunity to testify. And if you see in his committee report, you'll see that those invitations were sent out, and he definitely did his due diligence. So I'd like to thank him and his staff for the work he did, and most especially for his commitment to the safety and well-being of our island and her people. Thank you, Senator Sean Matata. Mr. Speaker, I introduced Bill 20-38 because I believe our community deserves to be protected from the growing and preventive dangers posed by consumer-grade fireworks. This legislation seeks to repeal Public Law 37-47, which currently allows the sale and use of fireworks without any meaningful safety measures, enforcement mechanisms, or deadlines for regulation. Since the passage of Public Law 37-47, we've seen the consequences firsthand. From disturbing noise complaints to serious injuries, fires, public safety risk, public fear, and confusion on the legality of the law, it's clear that the current law does more than harm than it does good. At the recent public hearing on Bill 20, we heard powerful testimony from those on the front lines: the Guam Fire Department, the Department of Agriculture, and even licensed pyrotechnic professionals all confirmed the same thing. This law has made it harder to keep our people safe. Jeff Sanchez, owner of the Show Pro Pyrotechnics, told us directly, quote, "Our stance is that we support the repeal, and the aimed reason all boils down to safety. What I told the last legislature was to pass a bill without even rules or regulations was very reckless," unquote. Acting Agriculture Director Christine Verheeren testified that the bill aligns with Guam's Forest Action Plan, noting the risk of wildfires and emphasizing that Guam's prior fireworks policy was once appalled globally for its restraint and community protection. So let's return that. In addition to the public hearing, we also heard from residents and families who shared stories of children, Manumku veterans, and pets being traumatized by uncontrolled fireworks. And let's not forget the data. In 2023, fireworks caused 8 deaths and nearly 10,000 injuries across the USA. Many involving children with severe burns and injuries to the hands, faces, and eyes. On Guam, my colleagues, we still do not have a burn unit at our hospital on this island. Those injuries become life-threatening emergencies and requiring off-island medical evacuation and a prayer that they get there in time. Bill 20 doesn't ban celebrations, though. It doesn't ban it. It restores, what it does is restores order and common sense. It ensures our neighbors are at peace, our environment is protected, and our loved ones are once again safer. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to speak on this measure. And I look forward to hearing from my colleagues, because I know I've listened to many people on the road, emails, running into them at grocery stores, saying how bad this bill has brought chaos to our island, but most especially now, during the dry season. Department of Agriculture says it's not a natural phenomenon that starts fireworks. The majority of fireworks are started by man. Let's not add to the issues on this island, but most especially, think about the safety of our families, our property, but most especially those who usually get hurt or even death because of fireworks. Let's not add. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to speak, and I look forward to any comments my colleagues may have.
Thank you very much, ma'am. On the bill, Bill 20-38. Gentleman from Momototomaiti, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to Bill 37-47. I do not believe that...
Excuse me. We're on Bill 20-38, sir.
Oh, my apologies, sir. I misspoke.
No problem.
Read my notes wrong.
Okay.
I stand in opposition to Bill 20-38. What 20-38 means to do is to repeal Public Law 3747. That was enacted just last year and has not yet been fully implemented. For instance, retailers cannot even import or sell fireworks until the Guam Fire Department finalizes the required regulation. So why rush to repeal it now? What urgent hazard exists that warrants aborting the normal rulemaking process midstream rather than allowing the existing law to prove itself or be refined through our oversight? Our neighbors in the CNMI have managed to allow safe and sane consumer fireworks under regulated conditions. Their law, for example, explicitly exempt items like sparklers, small firecrackers, and smoke devices from the fireworks ban, meaning such consumer-grade fireworks are legal and regulated in the CNMI. Did the proponents of Bill 20-38 examine the CNMI's experience or any data on how public safety is handled there? What makes Guam so different that we cannot safely manage what the CNMI has successfully managed in terms of legal fireworks? Where is the evidence that Guam's outcome will be worse? Supporters of repeal raise concerns that fireworks could spark wildfires. But can they cite a single wildfire on Guam actually caused by consumer fireworks? We know that nearly all wildfires on Guam are human-caused, predominantly by activities like illegal land clearing and arson by poachers, not by holiday firework displays. Given this context, is it justified to single out safe and sane fireworks as a wildfire threat without data? If fireworks truly pose a clear and present danger, shouldn't there be evidence of past incidents on island to support that? The only data I had were national stats, not relevant to us. 8 deaths in a country of 330 million. As a former wildland firefighter, I firmly believe we should restrict freedoms only when a clear and present danger to public safety is demonstrated. Do the proponents of Bill 20-38 genuinely believe that safe and sane fireworks meets that high threshold of danger? If so, where is the evidence in terms of significant injuries, fires, fatalities on Guam? Show us something to justify why we would compel us to strip away this freedom so soon after granting it. Are we legislating based on documented public safety crisis? Or are we reacting to hypotheticals and isolated incidents? We should seek to understand, not repeal, not without data, not with fear, because policy should follow facts, not unfounded worst-case scenarios. Our legislature put in a process, a motion, this previous law, built in with regulations and oversight to ensure fireworks are used safely. Let's trust that process instead of undermining it. If tweaks are needed, we have the tools to make adjustments. But an outright appeal at this stage signals that we don't trust our own system of governance. And I refuse to send that message. We must hold the line and let the agreed rules and oversight play out as intended. I will always put public safety first. As a former wildland firefighter, that is in my bones, but not at the cost of our freedom, not at the cost of community, of tradition. Do we ban beach barbecues because they might cause a fire? Of course not. We educate, regulate, and enforce reasonable precautions. The same should apply here. Unless and until there is a clear and present danger demonstrated by facts, we have no right to rob our law-abiding citizens of a cherished freedom to celebrate with safe and sane fireworks. We must not let hypothetical fears override the value of freedom on Guam. Today we start with fireworks. Tomorrow, what other freedoms do we start taking away from our community, couched in the language of doing it for our best interest? You know who should decide what's in our best interest? You, the individual. You get to decide what is in the best interest of yourself, what's in the best interest of your family. I know for my family, proud American family, that when my children come of age, when my daughter gets old enough to play with fireworks, I'm going to show her how to do it safe and responsibly, because that's my responsibility. That's my right. That's my freedom. And if people don't want to exercise that freedom, that's fair and that's fine, but you shouldn't take it from others. Thus far, there is no compelling evidence that legal and safe and sane fireworks pose any greater threat than we anticipated. Let's target the bad actors, enforce the law, but do not assume our families and entrepreneurs can't act responsibly. Remember why we legalized consumer fireworks in the first place, to bring back joy of family celebrations, to stop the dangerous practice of people firing guns in the air in lieu of fireworks, and to spark a new local industry for our economy. Those reasons still hold true today. We should honor the intent of the law we passed and give it a fair chance to work as envisioned. We are not the first to do this. Our neighbors in the CNMI allow safe and sane fireworks and shown it can be done responsibly. Guam can enjoy the same cultural celebrations and economic boost from fireworks that other communities do, without sacrificing safety if we follow through with proper regulations. At the end of the day, this is about striking a balance. We can have fun, freedom, and family celebration while still upholding the public safety. These goals are not mutually exclusive. I urge my colleagues, let's manage the risk responsibly rather than take a sledgehammer to our freedoms, to a law the people have asked for. Repealing it outright sends a message that we don't trust our community or our own legislative process, and I, for one, choose to trust both. Our people's ability to act responsibly and our ability as a legislator to guide sensible rules. Freedom must always be preserved unless a clear and present danger compels its limitation. And we simply do not have that here. Freedom is my #1 guiding principle, and I will always act to defend it. We have enthusiasm, we have economic hope, we have a plan for regulation, and we have a duty to see it through. Let's not douse the lights of our people's joy and enterprise based on fear. I stand firmly against this repeal in defense of our tradition, our economy, and most importantly, the integrity of our legislative process. With that, Mr. Chair, Mr. Speaker, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Senator. On the bill, is there any senator wishing to speak on the bill? On the bill. Gentlelady from Georgia, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, and I stand in support of this bill. What the legislature had authorized last year was a 24/7 use of fireworks. Of course, they put in that there should be rules and regs, there should be some enforcement capabilities, but there are none. But what we saw over the holidays, I think is undeniable. An increased use of illegal fireworks, I think because of the message that the legislature had sent, that it's okay, that these are safe. According to the committee report, the committee chair asked GPD specifically for information, but GPD has refused to provide the answers as to how many responses or complaints regarding illegal fireworks they had. But we saw that with our own eyes and ears in our communities, in our villages. And I don't think it's a right to have fireworks. All the other states that ban fireworks recognize that it is not a right, it is a privilege, one that can be controlled very carefully because of the risks and the safety to the community that overrides random use of fireworks. The best interest of the safety of our community. And I think it's compelling. Someone said there's not compelling interest, but I really do think it is compelling. When the International Association of Fire Chiefs, to which Guam Fire Department belongs, says the importation, sale, and use of all consumer fireworks, including sparklers, at the local, state, and federal level should be banned except for professional public displays by licensed pyrotechnic operators. They're not saying give them partial authority. They're saying ban because of the risk. They cite trauma and fire. That these people are putting their lives on the line to rescue, to combat. Why would we put another risk for them to deal with on purpose? We've got so much drug risk out there that we cannot handle right now. Our law enforcement is overwhelmed. I don't think we need to put them at risk purposely anymore. The Department of Agriculture was pleading with us prior to passage of the last bill and again this time. And they don't mince words either. They said repeal this law. They did not cite one of the grass fires that had been caused by fireworks. But they made it very clear that we have decided to put incendiaries, fire-causing materials on the shelves for people to use while they are sending 10 people out there, 4 at a time, in very limited resources, in one truck to fight these huge fires that we see especially right now. I don't want to put the Department of Agriculture firefighters into another fire caused by other humans and risk their lives if we can stop that. They said, disregarding the fire community's national and international advice would be ill-advised and counterintuitive to our local efforts to keep our community safe. To ignore local and national data is to literally turn a blind eye to the facts, the science, the best information made available. Again, 10 individuals total, 4 at a time, can go out on a truck to fight these fires. And that's the ones in the jungle, in the hills, in those unreachable areas. But if we have even one in one of our villages caused by fireworks because we had legalized it, I don't think that's a risk that I want to take. The professional, there's a professional who testified, Mr. Sanchez, as the author of the bill discussed. He's the owner of Show Pro Pyrotechnics and Jams Media Productions. He's hired by the government of Guam in the past and to put on these fireworks displays. And he says that he talked about an incident that happened in Jigo. He said, individuals supposedly put the fireworks into a pot to try to launch them into the air, not knowing that only will it not launch in the air, but then you have metal shrapnel that blasts everywhere. And so this sort of thing can happen regularly without the proper prevention. And we're going to continue to take a stance on safety because one life is one life too many. I agree. This is something we can prevent. And I think repeal of the law would send a very clear message, the opposite message to the one that was sent in the past, and send that message that, no, it is not okay. It was repealed because of safety. It's repealed because our firefighters, our police officers, our wildland firefighters are already overtaxed. They're overworked. They're at risk. And we do not want to put them more at risk. We do not want to put you in the villages at risk. We do not want to put your families at risk. We do not want to put children at risk. And I think by saying they're not legal, that we can help them to combat the rising bringing in of illegal fireworks, even customs. We have a problem stopping drugs at the border. We're going to be putting an additional burden on customs, stopping fireworks, and we know we have not been able to stop the fireworks, the illegal drugs. It's reasonable to guess that we will not be able to stop all the illegal fireworks either. So I think we can help by sending a message: unsafe, don't do it, fun maybe, but not worth the risk to your families, to our families, to the children. Not worth the risk. So I support the repeal, and I thank the author for doing the hard work and the committee for getting this, and the committee members for voting to do pass. Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the bill, are there any other senators willing to? Senator from Barragata, gentlelady, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I rise in full support of the repeal of the fireworks bill. And I know the good sponsor, both she and I were working very hard to, put all the safeguards in the bill, only to be shut down by the call of the question. So when we talk about legislation, endorsing the legislative process, that there's that downside where debate is shut down and policies are not, our best foot forward is not put forward, or best policies are not put forward. But I do want to say that the evidence was at the public hearing that we are unable to enforce illegal fireworks. It was very clear when the footage was shown in the public hearing and in conversations afterwards with law enforcement officers. I posed the question, what is the status of the investigation of the illegal fireworks? And I was told that they could not go forward with it. To me, that was very telling, that we cannot enforce this law. And we are putting our public at danger. I do not want to wait for the maiming of a child for us to come to and repeal this law, because the signs are already there that our law enforcement officers are hampered and cannot enforce this law. Yeah, safety is utmost importance, and that is why I support this repeal. I also pose the question to Guam Fire Department. Retiring speaker stated that the International Fire Chief's position is that to ban fireworks, consumer fireworks. And I asked them, why did they not speak up and support that position? I did not get an answer for that. But in my conversations with some of them, they're telling us to repeal it. Repeal this law. And so this is important that we listen to our community, listen to the needs of our community. We're not banning the use of fireworks. Fireworks still can be used as long as it's, and I thank the committee for making those changes, that we reverted back to the original language. But to have it used widespread on island is a catastrophe waiting to happen, and especially during this time of fire hazards. So I ask my colleagues for their support on this very important measure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the bill. On the bill. Are there any other senators willing? Gentleman from Georgia, you're recognized.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to rise and speak in support of this repeal of this law. Can I go back a little bit? The retiring speaker is right. This, I remember, pun totally intended. This was a very fiery session that we had relative to this law. But it was really about politics. You know, the retiring speaker also said, why didn't GFD come out and, speak the truth on the bill? Well, it was just because politics. It was politics. The senator who introduced this bill ran on this issue and was a swing vote in this House and supported the governor, lieutenant governor, on a lot of issues. And so for me, they just cleared the way and rammed this bill down the people of Guam's throats. We couldn't even debate it. And I don't agree that this is about freedom or liberty, because the law as it stands says that people can set off consumer-grade fireworks anytime, anywhere, at any hour. That's in the statute. So GFD can come up with the rules and regs, but the law says that you could set off fireworks at 8 in the morning right out here. You could set off fireworks at midnight next to Tanana's house. And so the law was very reckless. And the rules and regulations, I mean, we passed this law. I didn't vote for it. It was passed in 2023. The Guam Fire Department said that the rules and regs would be out by June of last year, a whole year ago. So I support the repeal of the law, and if GFD comes up with some rules and regs, maybe bring them to this body and we go over and we codify it. If people are gonna shoot guns in the air on New Year's Eve, Liberation, whenever, whether or not consumer fire-grade fireworks are legal, that's just gonna happen. It is what it is. I don't want to take us back to after this law passed, Senator Santa had to go on the news because people were setting off fireworks illegally. He had to go on the news and tell the people of Guam, hey, it's illegal to do that. You're not even supposed to be able to buy it. And so it was reckless. And that's why we didn't see the debate, the discussion, because it was silenced. That's why we didn't see the people who would normally come out and throw up the red flag on this issue. It was because it was politics. They didn't want to step on Senator Santa's toes. And I want to remind the people of Guam, although I'm pretty sure they don't need reminding, maybe some of our colleagues in here need reminding, but the senator who introduced this law, this bill, ran a single issue campaign. That's what he ran on. He said, put me in there and I'm going to legalize fireworks. He introduced the bill, he introduced the law, it became law, and the people of Guam didn't want him back in the House. I don't know if that's a judgment on this reckless and dangerous law, or there were several senators, as you guys know, that didn't make it back in. So I stand in support of the repeal of this, and yes, the CNMI does it, but they do it in a manner that's very different than this law that's on the books. So for those who say we should emulate our neighbors in the Norte Marianas, we should, and do it the right way. the way they've done it is safe and it is sane. The way we did it is kaduku. And we did send that message when this law was passed in this body and signed into law. People thought, oh, green light, let's go, gun it. And again, the good senator had to come on and say, hey, whoa, 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 stop. And so I think we just need to reset on this, get some good rules and regs from GFD, then take a good look at them. And if we want to legalize consumer-grade fireworks, if we care so much about freedom, if blowing stuff up is such a big part of our culture, and we can't have any family gatherings unless we set stuff on fire because nobody's going to have fun. I have a lot of family gatherings, and we don't have to blow anything up. And guess what? We have a good time. Now, we love to go watch the fireworks, too. We just had good fireworks down in Hoggett. You know, Hoggett's notorious for the fireworks, for the Mango Festival. And I think it was really key what Jeff Sanchez says. You know, he's the licensed fireworks guy. He said in the public hearing, I think he said it in the previous public hearing, that people might say, oh, you oppose this because you run a professional fireworks company. But I think Mr. Sanchez was very clear that, you know, if consumer-grade fireworks were truly legal and the rules and regulations were adopted, he would make a killing selling consumer-grade fireworks. And so he's speaking from a place of caution and worry, which is, you know, kind of where I'm coming from. I mean, our people definitely deserve freedom, but I think they also deserve leaders who are going to make decisions that are sound and truly safe and truly sane when it comes to issues like consumer-grade fireworks. So I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to rise in support of this repeal, and I encourage my colleagues to also support the repeal, and let's introduce something that, you know, is going to be safer and sane for the people of Guam, so they could enjoy consumer-grade fireworks in a manner, in a similar way to where it's enjoyed, you know, where it's enjoyed in other jurisdictions where they have the guidelines and the rules and regulations to make sure, you know, our kids aren't being sent to the ER because, you know, someone lost a finger, or, you know, just at NMI. And I remember in the debate of this, they're saying, oh, it's never happened. And if one of the retiring speakers says, where's the evidence? Of course not, there's no evidence because we haven't really legalized it yet. So as we do with many, many issues in this House, we look to whatever data we can find, whether it's data from California, Texas. You're going to tell me that stuff that catches on fire in California is not going to be flammable here in Guam? Come on now. Come on. So let's just do it right, Mr. Speaker. And I'll support it. You know, someone's going to introduce a bill that does this, you know, in a way that's truly safe, truly sane, instead of kaduku, then I'll be right there to support it. So, Sidosmasi, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, sir. Good gentleman from Talofofo, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of Bill 20-38. This is the total repeal of Guam's consumer-grade fireworks legislation that was passed in this session hall not too long ago. Why? Well, consumer-grade fireworks do pose a high potential of risk of injuries, hands, fingers, large number of injuries, children, higher risk. They accounted for 30% of emergency room visits for fireworks-related injuries worldwide. These are just some of the figures that jump out at me. And now, while I'm a consumer-grade, safe and sane fireworks fan myself, my dad introduced them to me and my two brothers when I was starting elementary school in the mid-1970s. The sparklers, the bottle rockets, the firecrackers, you name it. But Mr. Speaker, of greater concern to me as a member of this 38th Guam Legislature, the current policy did not address the rules and regulations. I think at some point, Mr. Speaker, a future legislature may bring a consumer-grade fireworks policy forward. With all the competing priorities to make this idea work in today's climate is going to be pretty tough. Why? The Guam Fire Department testified just across the way on the risk that the law we are repealing has on property fires and injuries. And in 2025, GFD is nowhere and I do mean nowhere near the development of the needed regulations to manage the sale and use of consumer-grade fireworks in Guam. I think it was a fair and an honest assessment of their role with the policy by GFD. The review and guidance was and remains extensive for that particular public safety agency, with so many other mandates, and considering that Massachusetts is the only other state in America that bans the activity. So a lot of work already that our branch places on them. Also, the Department of Agriculture, they opposed the original bill, and they supported Bill 20, highlighting the threat of fires and environmental damage. I think what gave me pretty significant pause living in Talafofo, the comment from Department of Agriculture that all of Guam's wildfires are human caused. With droughts becoming more common in our latitude, here in the Western Pacific, the risk increases exponentially. We have to do a better job of creating public policy that is responsible. Common sense tells us to be sure that rules be brought forward that utilize the resources of perhaps maybe other states. We heard about the CNMI that could have been developed for this particular industry. The last legislature and that body felt it was good enough to push ahead. Was it responsible? Well, Mr. Speaker, in her message to the Guam Legislature approving of Bill 9-37 COR enacted as Public Law 37-47, the governor noted that the new law would likely require additional funding and dedicated and coordinated resources across government agencies, including our public hospital and emergency response agencies. The governor further noted that to close any gaps in the enforcement language contained in the consumer-grade fireworks law, the new public policy was placed in a holding pattern until additional laws and regulations were acted upon. Put simply, Mr. Speaker, this consumer-grade proposal for fireworks was not ready to become law. It was not ready in 2023, and in 2025, we are nowhere, and I do mean nowhere, closer to establishing the necessary rules and regulations governing the importation and distribution of fireworks, and in this case, to be used as a consumer grade to our people. For this reason, I believe Bill 20 as amended recognizes our collective responsibility as policymakers to pass sound legislation and to refrain from acting on proposals which could in any way lead to unwanted outcomes, including the use of fireworks without rules and regulations and in violation of the law. Mr. Speaker, if I may add one more comment on the process in the committee. There was much time to develop this responsible policy with changes that truly reflected the input about this issue today, in the here and the now. The author and her co-sponsor took into account all of the public discussion, and I want to commend Senator Taitigui and for that. This policy is before you today. Again, common sense legislation to protect life and property should be our call here in this session hall. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the time this morning.
Thank you very much. Gentlelady from Vergara, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. You know, Mr. Speaker, first, I'd like to commend the author of the this bill, but also Senator Santa because of his celebratory disposition in life. And I'm the same. And fireworks for me is such a treat. But you know, safety rules over. I mean, it's a priority for me. So I rise today in full support of the amended version of the bill number 2038. Mr. Speaker, this is a measure that carefully restores the legal and public safety framework that existed prior to the enactment of Public Law 37-48. This bill does not act hastily. It responds to real documented concerns brought forward by our public safety officials, our environmental stewards, and members of the community who have witnessed firsthand the unintended consequences of legalizing consumer-grade fireworks. The amendments presented by the committee ensure that Guam's policy on fireworks is both clear and enforceable. By reinstating the previous language of sections 58109 and 58110, this bill limits the use of fireworks to government-authorized purposes, which helps eliminate confusion for residents and law enforcement alike. It also removes a regulatory structure that was never fully implemented due to the lack of finalized rules, penalties, and safety protocols. Mr. Speaker, throughout the public hearing, testimony from agencies such as the Guam Fire Department and the Department of Agriculture highlighted the dangers of continuing down the path authorized by Public Law 37-47. Real dangers that include preventable wildfires, injuries, and strain on emergency services. While the fire department remains neutral on the bill itself, it was clear from their comments that they are still in the early stages of developing the very infrastructure that was supposed to guide and the safe use of consumer fireworks. In the meantime, our community is left with an active law and no viable means of enforcing it. Now, Mr. Speaker, I am a mother, I'm a grandmother. The primary thing always in my mind is the safety of young children. And we have a lot of young children here in our community. And, you know, their safety, we as custodians, we need to be able to protect them. And not just for them. This measure takes a responsible step towards protecting our residents in general and our environment as well, especially in an area or an era where public safety resources are already stretched thin. It ensures that celebrations do not come at the expense of health, safety, or the natural beauty of our island. You know, Mr. Speaker, when many years ago, when our heritage traditions, cultural celebrations were developed, there were no fireworks. We celebrated by virtue of singing, dancing, storytelling. There's many forms of celebrations. And I don't think it's such a loss in our celebratory spirit to eliminate the use of fireworks. I also recognize the need to balance tradition and regulation, Mr. Speaker. And I believe that this bill does that by permitting professional, supervised displays while prohibiting unregulated personal use. So, Mr. Speaker, I thank the bill's authors, the committee, and all who testified for their thoughtful input. I urge my colleagues to support the amended version of Bill number 20-38. Let us move forward with a law that reflects readiness, responsibility, and a genuine commitment to safeguarding our community and our people. Sidu Usmase, Mr. Speaker.
You're very welcome. On the bill, any other senators willing to talk? Gentlelady from Jigo, you're recognized, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise in full support of Bill 20 because sometimes laws are passed with the best of intentions, but time and experience reveal collateral effects, and that is the case with Public Law 3747. What is meant to bring joy and tradition into our neighborhoods, 2 years later, as it has been pointed out repeatedly, there's still no rules and regulations in place, which continues to bring the risk of injury and chaos. This repeal is not about denying families celebrations. It's about ensuring these celebrations don't come at the cost of someone's home, someone's safety, and potentially someone's life. So I thank Senator Tello Taitigui and Senator Sabina for introducing this legislation. And again, I stand in full support and encourage my colleagues to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On the bill. Gentleman from Bergara, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I remember 2 years ago when almost 2 years ago when this bill was introduced, and I initially was excited, and you know, at the time I was like, if I was a senator, I'd support that bill because fireworks are cool. And my time in the military, if it was one thing I appreciated in some of the places I lived was that you can go around and buy really cheap fireworks and bring them home and light them up for 4th of July, New Year's. And so I was excited, but of course as I watched the session, the deliberation on the bill, and when it came down to ensuring that there were safety measures in place, I just didn't understand why the body or the majority at the time was against putting in safety measures. And to make it even worse, as with the bill passed, I think that New Year's, because it was like earlier, I forgot whether it was New Year's or 4th of July, I remember how crazy it was at night as they started to light it up in the village where we live in Barragata. And I think I speak for most military veterans. I mean, even just regular holidays like 4th of July and New Year's before this bill was passed, it's definitely not something most of us that have been to combat and have been exposed to that kind of stuff, or those with PTSD that, you know, put on earplugs and try to sleep through the night without having those sounds. But that year when the bill was passed, it was probably the worst many of us probably experienced as you know, military veterans. And what I want to make sure I make sure it's clear is I'm not against, you know, like I shared with the sponsor of the bill, the senator from Timoning, that I initially didn't support the bill, but I support what she's trying to do. Is obviously the bill's, you know, it's in law and there's no rules or regulations, and you know, I hope, or if not nobody does, I plan to reintroduce a bill that will have these rules and regulations, because there really should be strict rules in when and where these things should be used. And you know, in Texas, I'll use for an example, one, you cannot buy, they don't sell fireworks in most of the city and populated areas, and then they're very strict in regards to where you can set them off. And so I agree with the, you know, again, when it was initially introduced by Senator Sana, I was excited for it and couldn't have waited till, you know, we can drive around and look for the little fireworks stand. But again, as it was deliberated and there was no compromise in putting in safety measures, I was definitely disappointed that the bill passed. And so I, you know, commend Senator Taitigui for introducing this measure, and I look forward to some of the, you know, most of the senators support it, whether I introduce it or somebody introduces a bill with a lot more restrictions. And so I encourage my colleagues to support this bill as well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You're very welcome. On the bill. On the bill. It appears that you've gotten everybody, so Senator Taitigui, you can close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I really appreciate everybody's testimony you know, and of course, you know, I love fireworks. I look forward to it every year or maybe twice a year, and if I find out there's a function going on, I try and make it. But we all do it in the safety and comfort of watching these fireworks, not worried about one setting off right next to us as we're sitting enjoying watching these fireworks. It's a big fear. You know, I thank my colleagues who spoke, and I do want to mention some of the comments that were made earlier and address them. And one of them is about my good colleague from MTM. I did speak to individuals and leaders in the CNMI when I was visiting them before the original bill came out, you know, for a discussion that was passed. And even the leaders and individuals in CNMI, they too are looking at repealing the law for fireworks because of a number of safety issues that are going on in Saipan. I know he also mentioned the fact he was a fireman. Well, my son is a fireman. He's a firefighter. And it's clear that he is in present danger every time he has to go out to a fire. And I spoke to him about this. And he believes fireworks, it's another danger that he and his firefighters have to address. He doesn't believe in having these, especially with no rules and regulations. When I told him the whole story, it's like he was just flabbergasted. And that brings me to another thing, the Department of Agriculture. I mean, we were being watched internationally, our island, and I just wanted to bring up a comment that she made, the acting director, Camacho Ferrin. And just a small clip is, most likely one or two maybe escaped backfires, and investigation would have to be conducted to determine that. But the majority of these fires have been intentionally set fires to include the reforestation project sites. It just needs to be re-emphasized that right now you see fireworks going up in the air, then you hear injury. But soon before, we see more burned land, more compromised landscapes, and loss of agricultural land. We're just making it so much easier for fires by keeping this law as is. We should go back to when everyone across the nation in international waters, Australia, wildland fire investigators who trained our Guam team here, applauded us, and have been tracking the status of this ever since, referring to the bill that was passed. Sending articles on, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. So I just had to share that again, that it's not just the Guam boys, it's these other partners that have been watching with heartbreak, because you did, Guam, what the rest of us have been trying to do. And in one swift move, it was obliterated. This is Department of Agriculture working with people in other countries. We are being watched. And there is facts are clear. There is data that is there that shows harm. It is more than just fear, because there are zero regulations in the current fireworks law. Fireworks are legal 24/7, 365 days a year, at every hour of the day and night. Here's data. In 2025, Honolulu, Hawaii, where many of our families and friends live, to this day, experienced one of the worst fireworks accidents to date. 5 people died in that accident and 20 injured. Many of them were children. In 2024, the Guam Fire Department responded to an explosion in Jigo that injured 8 people, 5 whom were hospitalized, including 4 children. Then in 2025, our New Year's Eve was overwhelmed with sounds of sights of smoke, bright lights, and chaos from Jigo to Dedido to Sinahanya. Illegal, unregulated fireworks lit up the sky. And with no enforcement rules in place, our first responders were stretched thin, putting even more lives, these responders, at risk. Many of those injured were either not reported or was brought to the hospital claiming their burn injuries were from something else other than fireworks for fear of police report. That's data. That is information, true to form. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank Senator Paris, or the good lady from Barragata, for her insight and the research and the fight that the two of us has stood side by side trying to make the wrong a right by repealing this law. But I'd just like to recognize her too as well during the 37th, how we've stood by the author of the legislation and provided all these amendments to make the law a better law. We did that. 6 different amendments to try and do what Senator Borja mentioned earlier, to have these in a safe, be able to do this safely. So I'd like to thank her for her continued fight on this and never giving up. I urge my colleagues to consider the messages that we heard today, not just here, but during the public hearing, and to support this legislation before the next holiday brings more heartache to our island. I motion, Mr. Speaker, to now place Bill 20-38 COR into the voting file.
There is a motion to move Bill 20-38 COR as amended to the voting file, and there has been an objection. Therefore, all those in favor of moving Bill 20-38 COR as amended to the voting file, please indicate by raising your hands. Motion passes. Colleagues, it is now 12:17. Let's go ahead and take a lunch break and be back here by 2 p.m. 2 p.m. And at the rate we're going, I will anticipate that we are going to be working late into the night again. Thank you very much. We are in recess.